Welcome back to the Digging the Greats podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Shaw. My guest today is Derrick Hodge. He's a bass player, arranger, conductor. He's worked with a ton of huge artists at the highest level possible. I recently posted a video on Digging the Greats breaking down Common's album B. Derrick played that bass intro on the album and arranged the strings you hear. Other artists he's worked with: Robert Glasper, Jill Scott, Mos Def, the Juneteenth Celebration at the Hollywood Bowl, the Oscars, Q-Tip, the list goes on and on. We talk about his work with all of these artists, his approach to music in general, and his most recent album, The Color of Noize, and his current tour. We first connected a few years ago because he did arrangements for the orchestral performance of Noize's Illmatic, playing bass on the original performance at the Kennedy Center. As a current member of Noize's band, this is a show I've played many times since, so I sent Derrick a message a few years ago the first time I played it, and now here we are nerding out about music and the bass. This was such a great conversation. I got links in the description to Derrick online. Go follow him. For now, let's jump into my conversation with Derrick Hodge. So with B, that is now like, you know, one of the most famous hip-hop bass lines ever, and that's you on upright bass. So can you tell me how that came about, what that was like, and then, you know, what it feels like knowing that you're part of that history?
Man, B was such a special, that was such a unique time for me, man. And even where we recorded it, man, in the legendary Columbia Sony spot up in New York. Yeah. There was so much great music and fertile things happening at that time in the city. And it was the thing about moments at that studio. It was always about just capturing something honest, you know, in the moment, not, you know, showing up like being too like, okay, let me be this version of myself that I think everybody wants. You know, it always felt like when doing sessions in New York, like, let me just be free, be me, document any moment in the day. And B, what made that so cool is my brother Common and love to Kanye, man. Like they were so understanding of that and open to that. What people don't know about B is like there was a whole string section in the room.
Oh, really?
As I was recording that, you know, and it wasn't originally going to be what it ended up being. Like I had this whole string thing written out. And because I couldn't see the string players, you know, I'm kind of mimicking the phrases so that they could kind of feel it instead of having to worry about the pulse of the metronome too much.
Yeah.
And as I'm playing the notes and talking, you know, Common and Kanye, he's like, yo, what about that? You know what I mean? So I just literally just started playing free, just the vibe of what I'd already kind of written out as an intro.
Yeah.
And then
before you get into the main line?
Yeah. And then that ended up being it. And then we ended up using the strings for the main part later. But then the first part ended up being just what it is. And at the moment, you don't always all the way get to understand context. Like, hey, this is going to be the opening of the album, you know, and then this is going to be a thing that kind of ends up being a moment, you know, for your career. In the moment, I was just literally, as they say, I was being in the moment and being free. And that album in particular is so special because everything about that process was about honesty, and I much love to my bro Common and Kanye for just trusting that. Like I didn't know they were going to let that me start the album like that, you know, especially since it was a big album for Common, you know, and they were investing in it. So the fact that they were willing to let that speak that way, I think about them both in that way to this day.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, because I know that's pulled from a sample, but that is live strings on there. That you did that arrangement. Gotcha.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And that was the thing. It was like the cool thing, and I got to tell him this personally the other day. That time in my life, I say B is important because it was like so many different things happening. I was doing a lot of playing in that idiom that we call jazz, you know. And Christian McBride was a big influence on me, and the great Ron Carter. And I think that informed my decision making. I got to tell Christian McBride like my mic placement, my choices, and all that, and the way I wanted. Like I was trying to mimic that clarity that he got on what was that album called? Finger Paintings that he did with Nicholas Payton. Like so they informed my pacing. You know, I thought about Ron Carter because I'd been working on. I was producing with Q-Tip leading up to that record. So and you know, Tip sample Ron a lot. So I've been really respecting like the sound of his samples on record. So
Yeah.
the pacing to which I decided to do that intro, that was really trying to honor all of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah,
That's
man.
so cool. So something that I love about you and your career is, I mean, there's bass players, like there's upright bass players and there's electric bass players, and there are some people that do both. But
Hmm.
then if you do both, there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. Like there's jazz, there's orchestral stuff, and you are like right in the Venn diagram, right in the middle of so many different things. Because like you grew up playing classical, yeah.
Jazz, classical, and gospel. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Hmm.
like you have, and with your arrangement stuff and your conducting, like you have those chops from that world, but then you also
Thank you.
have the sensibility and understanding from like hip hop, which is
Hmm.
very different as far as like, in the classical world, it's very sheet music
Yes.
driven, which I want to talk to you about that specifically with the Illmatic arrangements that you've done.
Hmm.
Um, but that's very sheet music driven, and then the like hip hop especially, jazz is much freer, but then hip hop especially gets away from sheet music kind of stuff, but you bridge all of those genres and more like so well. So like do you find that like all of those different influences influence each other in your playing or your arranging, or your production stuff, like you were saying with trying to bring some of that like Ron Carter or Christian McBride stuff into the B sessions? Like,
Yeah.
do you find, and that's hip hop stuff, do you
Hmm.
find that you're pulling from orchestral knowledge or jazz knowledge over here for an unrelated project? Like, how do you see those things kind of weaving
Yeah,
together?
man. I'm glad you asked that. You know, I think for me, I try to be water. You know, in any
Yeah.
situation. Um, and the biggest opportunity, I'll say, not challenge, but opportunity has been in each situation. Do I choose to honor and see that as an opportunity to
Yeah.
just trust the moment? Because for me, to answer that, really, I have to say my upbringing. It's always been. I've had a life of extremes. While doing one thing, there was always something else I was doing. While I'm on tour as a teenager, you know, doing
Yeah.
the Jill Scotts and Floyd musics and all that, Anthony Hamilton, all that back then. No one saw me as a composer, but I just loved that sound. So I fed that hunger and that curiosity. So instead of
Yeah.
waiting for the opportunity to come on the road, I would just score and write and
Yeah.
do those things. And oftentimes what I was writing contrasted what I was performing
Yeah.
at the time, but I started to really just enjoy that contrast.
Yeah.
Um, and that became part of my creative voice, like all those contrasting things. I see that as just something that's a tool set. And the biggest thing is trusting and being willing to all the way let go. And people say that often,
Mm.
but for me, it's been about trusting that opportunity. Okay, I've been transcribing Schindler's List and working on these families and really getting that skill set of really knowing the family of instruments and how they work and how they can work against each other and how can they complement each other.
Yeah.
Trusting that and being willing to let that all the way go and not try to show that off when it's time to
Yeah.
write for the world is yours. Do I just
Yeah.
trust that the moment and the spirit of what's information I'm getting is going to guide me where I need to go? You know, so I
Yeah.
start off with prayer, and for example, and then that's what oftentimes helps the music that I'm doing, whether it's orchestrating or it's cinematic or anything, to feel really honest and unique to what that is. Because
Yeah.
at that time when I started even working with, like, for example, Illmatic, to be specific, that was
Yeah.
8 years ago, probably 8, 9 years at this point when I started working on that. And I had a decision to make. Do I try to prove a point? Hey, I'm an young African American man showing up, young composer, and oftentimes, do I need to prove a point that I belong?
Yeah.
Do I try to show that in the music? That's not serving the music.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
not serving the music. So what I chose, for example, was to let all that go, let all that study go, and say, let me trust the words. So I just went and just listened to Illmatic over and over again, and talked with my bro Pete Rock, and just
Yeah,
started getting the spirit of what happened with the decision making of those samples, why those samples were chopped up the way they did, and
yeah,
that ended up being the real spirit of that music happened, and the chops of actually knowing how to write for orchestra that helped me get that story out. So
yeah.
really, it's become for me to this day being willing to let it all go, and just trust, if I honor the story, that those tool sets will like allow me to speak what I feel is honest. And that's been the biggest challenge, especially, now I'm getting to write for, 80, 85 piece orchestras and all that. And do I still trust that when I know we have all that at our arsenal and we're in front of all these people? Do I still trust, oh no, but this story is only telling me maybe heart and a bunch of DeVisi
Mm,
strings. Do I trust
yeah,
that?
yeah,
So that thing of being water and just taking all that in and trusting the contrast of what I am, and the question mark of all these things, really trying to define what is Derrick. Like, that's part of who I am to this day, which connected color of noise, which is the question mark of what is it that I do. that
yes,
does
yeah,
I connected all that to the orchestrator side of myself, to the producer, to
yeah,
the bassist, all of that, to the father,
yeah,
living a family life in Denver, you know what I mean? All of that.
yeah.
It's all connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love uh and I want to talk about color and noise too in a second. I love how diverse your influences are, and you kind of like synthesize them all together. Because yeah, as I've mentioned to you, I have played your Illmatic arrangements. I
Man,
mean, at
I
this
was so
point,
honored when I got that message. I was like, oh, thank you.
dude, yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know you're on, like, you did that original performance with the Kennedy Center, and
Yeah.
there's a recording of that. So like
Hmm.
I on my end listened to those because I got the call
Yeah.
for that. uh uh, it was maybe like a week or two before,
Okay.
and that was my very first introduction, is because they needed someone who could fill in and play electric and play upright
And
and could
upright. Yes.
read,
Yeah.
but then like has other sensibilities. So diving into your arrangements, and then they sent me sheet music and everything.
Hmm.
uh it was like I'm able to see exactly what you're talking about, like trying to serve the music and see what's there. But I can also see on the orchestral side of me, I can see everything that you're doing, and like, oh wow, this part, and like you're saying, this sample is expanded out to this string line over here. This is
Yeah.
so cool.
Hmm.
So being able to play through your arrangements
Hmm.
has been amazing. Like the work you've done on that, and then obviously you've done so many other things. But that's my direct stuff that I've played of yours that has been it's so cool. And some of the interludes and stuff that are in there,
Oh
it
man.
just like elevates the whole thing. And already, like, it's an incredible album, but then hearing it expanded out in that context is so cool.
Thank
Um,
you, man. It means a lot that you're expressing that, because honestly, everything I was saying, that's still in my mind and my intent. But you never know, as an artist, is that spirit and that intent connecting? So for
yeah.
you to say that without me talking to you about it, for you to say it connected in that way and you kind of felt the intent behind it, that means a lot, man.
Yeah,
That
well,
really
yeah,
means
man.
a
I
lot
mean,
for me.
absolutely. Like it's incredible stuff, and that's a challenging. Like we've performed that now probably like 6 or 8 times, something like
Yeah,
that, with various orchestras.
yeah.
And
It's
it's
not easy.
a
It's not the easiest to execute with
no,
orchestras.
it is a very
Yeah.
unique challenge because of in the band being bass, drums, DJ, keys, and
Hmm.
Noize.
Yeah.
uh I would be the only one reading, and
Right.
then the orchestra doesn't know the music. Like they don't know, if he comes in a bar early or something,
Yeah.
or not a bar, he wouldn't do that. But if the arrangement gets off slightly, they're going to want to stay on whatever the music says.
Yeah.
So bridging that gap is a fun challenge, definitely.
Yeah. And that's been fun too. Like really trying to honor both worlds. Like in the end, I had a decision to make earlier. Like I said, do I let that fuel me, kind of the energy that I'm receiving?
Yeah,
Like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, you did this? Oh, okay. Do
yeah,
I
yeah,
let that fuel me in a way where I feel like I need to prove a point or I'm disappointed, or do I see that as an opportunity? How's this going to
yeah,
help others, coming along the way? And how do we become allies in conversation with this? And that's happened with so many symphonies, thankfully, around the
yeah,
country and around the world, at this point.
yeah,
What I try to do with that same thing, knowing how they think, I try to write things in a way, but also honor the way that's the best process for like Nas and a lot of different artists. Like, no, I'm going to write in these players. They see the lyrics. They
yeah,
see it. They oftentimes see all the like the key starts. If the artist is off, they should hear it and see it.
yeah, yeah,
And that's my way of also honoring even like that way of just playing by ear, understanding things that aren't written, where it's an actual true collaboration, where they're
yeah,
almost forced to have to respect that way. Now, oftentimes, for what I've heard, they may not necessarily honor that, and still just play on like I didn't write in there. No, only start
yes,
when you hear him saying this. But
right, right, right.
the intent in the score was to honor, honestly, both traditions. Even by
Yeah,
ear, by the spirit of it,
yeah,
and that kind of mimic honoring the artist that decided to sample that record in the first place, that made it so
yes,
relevant to orchestras. So it's been fun really trying to figure out a way, how do I honor both sides in the score, not just by making it sound cool and all this stuff. Like, how do I word things in a way? How do I use
yeah,
diction sometimes not that's not just Italian based? Like, how do I explain things really that's in a real way today, that they have to
yeah,
kind of understand that no, you have to be open minded approaching this.
yeah,
Think
yeah,
raw, basis play,
yeah,
with the
yeah,
bow, but you're representing the gutter here. Like, I'll write that
yeah,
stuff in the charts,
yeah, yeah.
and it's been great over time. Hearing orchestras honor that intent more and more.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know
Yeah.
you've done like Hollywood Bowl arrangements with Snoop, with her, Christina Aguilera. You
Hmm.
just did. It was last year, right? The Juneteenth celebration, and you
Man, that
conducted.
was incredible, man.
Yeah, tell me
Yeah,
about that, because I know it was a all black orchestra, which is
yeah,
not. I don't know if it's completely unheard of, but it's definitely not very common,
yeah.
and very very cool. So tell me about that experience.
Man, Juneteenth in particular, man, that was such a special moment last year. Just to be a part of that. Like, listen, I appreciate the love people are shown, but let me put myself aside, man. Like, that orchestra that was put together by a young African American queen, Stephanie Matthews.
Yeah,
She decided to honor that moment. I didn't realize that was really I was like, no, it can't be. That was really the first time an all African American orchestra was on that stage.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Like,
on the Hollywood
ever.
Bowl stage. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I didn't know, I didn't all the way realize, but the fact that Stephanie Matthews is the contractor for that orchestra, the Recollective Orchestra, she decided to really honor that and not just get great players. She got players that have been really significant in as African American players and principal players in different symphonies around the country. She reached out to every principal lead African American player in the country, and most of them made
wow,
themselves available for that performance. The first time ever that many principals, African American players, were together on the stage at the same time. And I didn't know all the way until I arrived and was in that moment with them and hearing the stories about what that meant to them.
yeah,
It hit me like everything that's happened in my life and career was not by coincidence. It's for moments like that where
yeah,
I can take a step back and just let them be with in the moment that they've been fighting for, honestly, for way before me.
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
it was just a humbling moment for to see them all get the shine that they deserve, and millions of
yeah,
people saw that. But the
yeah,
fact that they were represented, playing their the way they wanted to be represented, playing the music that, represented them, and them being collected together for this moment, and them taking the time to be a part of that moment. That meant everything. And then, of course, the musical experience itself, it was special, man. Working with all these different
Yeah.
artists,
Yeah.
it was just a special time. But I
Yeah.
will say, I think that what sticks with me is remembering, once I realized who these actual players are that are playing and what they've done and accomplished, the fact that they made the time to be a part of it,
Yeah.
because they knew the significance of it. It made me just make sure I'm honoring them every step of the way the best that I can.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, tell me about your most recent album, Color of Noise,
Hmm.
because this is like such an eclectic mix of so many different, not only like genres and instrument elements, but also like your career. Like we don't
Yeah,
have time to cover everything in your career because it's just like so wide and varied. Um, and this album feels like a distillation of that, of so much of your career. So tell me about that recording process, what that's been like, and then I know you're going on tour, doing a winery tour, so I want to hear about
yeah,
that as well.
man. Color of Noise in particular, that was so special for me, man. We recorded that right and put the album out right when COVID was like, "Hey, I'm here."
Yeah.
So, the whole touring of it, didn't happen at first and all that. But
Yeah.
what I appreciated, that came out that summer, and how it helped, the messages I received from it, man, how it helped so many people just get through that time, through their day. There was something vulnerable, something honest about it that they felt. Again, that was not much different than me hearing you say kind of the intent that you felt when playing the
Yeah.
Illmatic stuff. That Color of Noise, when I started hearing from people what that meant to them and how honest it felt, man, it just encouraged me to keep going that direction. Color of Noise was so unique because I wanted to really highlight that spirit of acceptance in album form.
Mm,
Self-love, acceptance, for better or for worse, here I am, and not
yeah.
just me, everyone else on this journey with me. This is our offering in the moment. We're
Yeah.
best serving this moment by being completely vulnerable. This is it. And the musicians didn't all the way know that we're playing it, that was going to end up being the intent and spirit of it. Like that whole album, everything that people are hearing, those are first takes.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
the song that ended, "You Could Have Stayed," the piano version, that was a young
Yeah.
gentleman, Jahari Stampley, that my brother Robert Glasper introduced me to. He said, "Man, you might want to hear this young fella, man. He's so talented." Jahari came to the studio and I showed him this song on piano. He didn't know that the engineer was rolling. He got up behind me and just, kind of played it out. The voice kind of voice led it a little bit, played the chords, simply stated. That was within 10 minutes of meeting him.
Oh wow.
And I felt like I could not put that on the album and say that this is what this spirit of this record is about, and not honor that. So that last song, that is 10 minutes within me meeting him, who was, I think he had just turned 18 or 19 at that point.
Oh wow.
So the spirit of that, connecting him with Mike Aberg and Mike Mitchell and Justin Tyson, two drummers who didn't even know that they were both going to be playing drums on the same record at the same time
Yeah.
until they arrived. All those things, it was by design to
Yeah.
just see, what if I put these amazing artists who I love and I love for whatever different reasons, maybe the fearlessness of this one, the record like execution of this one, the understanding of parts and sounds of this one, the innocence, the forward direction of this one. What if we put them all together? They all
Yeah.
represent sides of me. And then I represent that spirit of that person who decided to trust that thing in me.
Yeah.
The person who decided to put me on and just say, "Hey, Derrick can do it." That person for me was
Yeah.
Kevin Arthur when I was a teenager. He put me
Mm.
on my first tour when they were like, "Well, who is this dude?" He believed
Yeah.
in me
Yeah.
when I didn't all the way believe. So it was a way of honoring a lot of the spirit of that and acceptance and self-love, and then saying, "Okay, let's get together. Here's the theme. Here's the idea. This is how I think we can kind of make everything sing and dance. Let's see what happens." And
Yeah.
Color of Noise is completely that. And everyone owned that moment in that way. But you never know how it's going to touch people when the
Yeah.
album comes out. So the fact that Color of Noise, like Message of Hope, that I did on my voice memo and just played different instruments. Those were the moments that were so most vulnerable for me. And those are the moments that people speak to the most. Like, hey, that helped me get through my day. That helped me believe. That helped me not want to hurt myself. That's
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love Noize in particular. That was the beginning of a direction where I said, let me just make sure everything I'm doing is kind of serving that kind of spirit of
yeah,
self-love, acceptance, you know what I mean? And just allowing it to be. And even though orchestration on the surface seems like a very through compose what it is idiom, I still try to honor that in a way, even if it's in how I explain to people how to play, uh,
yeah,
ways to help them open up and think, hey, I would love to hear your spirit in this, even as an
yeah,
orchestral section. And that's what's
yeah.
helping the music sound a little more with intent and purpose, you know?
Yeah, well, I think that's a combination. That's something that you uniquely can do, because that's a combination of the improvisational stuff that you do, which is exactly what you're saying, but then combined with uh, string stuff. Like if you're going to have a string section, you got to write stuff out, but
Yeah,
you're within that giving them some of that space to be themselves and to interpret some stuff a little bit. And
absolutely. Because it's
yeah,
possible. Like, that's the thing. People don't limit in what we call improvisation. Oftentimes, I think, and I hate using the genres and naming categories, but
yeah,
instrumentalists, I'll say, oftentimes we think,
sure, yeah,
sometimes we even speak of improvisation. It's limited. It's in a way of how someone plays their instrument or horn or drums or string instrument through chord changes and how we improvise. There's so many other ways of improvisation.
yeah,
Improvisation is taking any given thing and going with it.
yeah, yeah,
Improvising with that given amount of material and then see where you go with that. And honestly, they can do. There is moments we can do that even in through composed music.
yeah,
Even if it takes learning the names of the principals playing each section and writing their name in the chart and say, hey,
mm,
open up here, play off the
yeah,
chart, and then they
yeah,
do it. But that's a unique way of having orchestral members be a part of that collaborative, in the moment,
yeah,
spontaneous improvisation way, or
yeah,
allowing sections in fermata moments, them able to dictate how they'd like to go dynamically. Even with
yeah,
dynamics, that's a form of improvisation.
yeah,
Like, not limiting it to, okay, improvisation is just taking notes and just playing fast and playing all kind of things over. There are so many ways. How do we treat the note? The
yeah,
timing of it, the pace.
yeah,
How do we choose to honor even what's written on the paper? After hearing it, Derrick wrote down, I want to represent the gutter. Okay, that's giving the section leader to remark the parts. Okay, let me tell them, let me change. This is the bowing Derrick had in mind. Let's
yeah,
change that to this.
yeah.
That's improvisation. Even
Right,
a
exactly.
changing of bow markings
Yeah.
to
Oh, yeah.
serve
It'll
the
completely
music. You
change
know what
it.
I mean?
Yeah.
So the fact that orchestral members to this day are emailing me about it, saying, hey, I appreciate, you know what I mean, you
Yeah.
doing that, you explaining it in that way, in
Yeah.
the way they owned it, where I hear them sounding themselves. Like,
Yeah.
that's what collaboration is about. And I feel like that's a part of my journey. And that relates to Color of Noise, just acceptance,
Yeah.
allowing
Yeah.
people in one way. The job ends up on me. How do I explain it to them in a way that honors the tradition of how they've learned the instrument, but also welcomes them in some way to be a part of this experience that's happening
Yeah.
with the rhythm section in front of them, that the way they speak best isn't to theory and paper.
Yeah.
How do I get them to not diminish that, but instead complement that?
Yeah. Man, I love hearing you talk about this, because you treat it with such love and respect, and like it's the highest level music that you're talking about. Like you're not
Thank
showing
you,
up
bro.
and just doing it, and you don't want players to just show up and a gig's a gig and you're just going to get through it and whatever. But on an artistic level, like elevating it and allowing every musician on stage to be part of that. And I can say, because I have played your arrangements without you on the stage, that spirit is definitely still present, because players come up to me and are like, because not affiliated with the orchestra, they'll come up to me and say, oh, this is so incredible getting to play this music. Like, I grew up listening to this, and then getting to play it, like the tuba player, who that's not, I mean, I guess the roots are the exception, but the tuba is not commonly associated with hip hop.
It's not often, yeah.
Yeah. But saying I grew up listening to this and getting to play some of this with you guys, like this is incredible. So yeah, I think that's a big unique factor in the music that you make. If it's something like Color and Noise, if it's a film score, if it's conducting an orchestra, if it's arranging, or if it's, I mean, it comes through in your solos too.
Thank you, man.
What's your thought process when you're taking a solo? Because I mean, I've watched you solo many times, and it feels, it's so like genuine from the heart. Like you're not.
Thank you, man.
It's definitely not like, okay, here's a solo, I gotta get through it or whatever. It feels like, I'm gonna get woo woo for a second, but it feels like if your mouth is connected to your heart and the way you speak, it's the same thing, but it's your hands, and it's, even though it's not words, like it's a direct path to your heart, like even more than if you explained it with words.
Thank you, man.
So what goes through your head on soloing specifically?
Man, I'll give you the absolute honest truth, man. Each time, the one thing I can say for sure, by the time I've arrived there, I'm to a solo, I'm not thinking about it. Oftentimes, when I'm playing, I'm thinking about everything that's going on around me and responding, and being in a moment in that way. Oftentimes, I just don't, by the time it's time for a solo, I might be reacting to the end of a theme I just heard, or just the beauty of the people in the audience, maybe the way that energy is speaking to me, and then I just allow it to take me wherever it's going to take me. And each time is honestly dependent on the people, and that's what makes it truly an experience where every person there in that moment defined what I thought, because I'm responding to that energy, not just my brothers or sisters or who I'm performing with, or not even just the experiences that day, whether it's mine or others around me. Me exuding that through the music is never just that. It's all of it. The sound, the way it's coming back at me through the house. Am I hearing, the bass a certain type of way that might make me turn the amp almost all the way off and just play and react to that. That sound as if I'm just hearing myself in a distant monitor. But what inform those decisions, the decision making through their solo, changes every night. And that depends on each room, each situation, how I felt any given day, how those around me felt. I just try to trust it. And honestly, that's no different than my writing. The biggest thing is allowing that moment, not to, with writing, it becomes a little more challenging because you're specifically at some point you're writing the things out, and you have so many immediate things that you're also in the process of doing that, no matter how quick you write, where ideas start coming, especially when things are lining up a certain type of way and you're tempted to either overly prove a point because you're writing and it's allowing you to, because it's right in front of you, or just really just trust that moment and say, you know what, let the spirit of this be. And in that way, my orchestrating and my playing, whether it's a bass solo or orchestrating, it's very similar. The way it's come across, because it's coming from the same place of just trying to document moments in time. B was a moment in time, even though the spirit of that was actually, a sample, as you mentioned. But the process of that and the way that intro happened, that was not even planned in that way. The way that happened was just by honoring the moment in time and trying to make sure everybody felt comfortable with the phrasing of how they're going to play my arrangement based on that sample. And then that's what led to what people hear now, So again, going back to B specifically, that's what makes that album so unique, because it's documenting different ways of thought that went into that record, and how that song happened was just acceptance. Everybody just trusted, okay, this is enough. And
Yeah.
I didn't even expect that to be the opening of the record, so that actually fueled me to this, to this day. Anything my brother Common needs, I'm there. I respect that, the way they chose to honor what I had to say as an instrumentalist
Yeah.
at that time. It had a profound effect on me. It even affected the way I choose to really think responsibly with decisions that I make. Like, for example, One Love Represent,
Yeah.
that you did with, Nas in there. There's little moments where I try to document my journey. In the middle of
Mm.
Nas One Love Represent, if people listen closely, I'm actually referencing some Black Star Most Def. I forgot what the name of the song is, but I hint at some of that in the middle of it, a little piece of it, because I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
honoring,
Yeah.
actually, my first orchestral arrangement for hip hop was with Most Def at Carnegie Hall. That's
Yes.
what
Yeah.
led to that Kennedy Center event and all that. So
Yeah.
it's a way that it was like, okay, if these opportunities are happening, how do I honor them in my
That's
story?
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I gotta dig through now. That's amazing. I gotta find it.
yeah,
Because
it was great.
that's
I can't
another
I'm
amazing
spacing
album.
right now on the name of the song,
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, and it feels like before, because you did B before Most Def Carnegie Hall. Is that correct? Timeline wise?
let me see. Most Def Carnegie Hall B. Let me see.
I know B is 2005.
B is 2000. So that was in that same time frame, definitely. I can't
Okay.
remember when. It has to be post 2005 because that Chris Dave was playing, and we all
Yeah.
kind of met and started playing and doing experiment stuff around that time. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because with that B, it's that sample, but then it's like you're kind of like de-arranging it
yeah,
and picking it apart, because it
yep,
starts with you it starts with you kind of with the bass cadenza, and
hmm,
then you start with the bass line, which is the bass line from the sample but
yeah,
isolated, and then the
yeah,
piano comes in, and then the strings on top of
yeah.
that,
James
and so
Poyser.
you're
Yeah,
like, yeah, so you're like rebuilding it up to the
hmm,
sample.
yeah,
So that feels like uh you getting your feet wet with, and like you're saying, that them trusting you to do this, and then that expanding all the way out to this. I mean, Most
distinct
Def
man.
stuff, Illmatic, and the stuff you're doing now. That's an amazing like journey to see that whole expansion.
Man, and bro, like I tell you, like I said before, I feel like things that have happened is not been by coincidence. I love how things and appreciate how it looks on the resume with all this name droppy stuff, but I'm
Right.
not about that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really not about, like, I'm thankful for those opportunities, but I feel like it's not by coincidence because I didn't plan for it to happen that way. Things kept
Yeah.
happening in a way where it was like, let me just pay attention to this, be 100% in this moment, and then see what happens.
Yeah.
And then it's become, but it's not by coincidence. For example, B, James Poyser is on there. That's
Yeah.
the next voice you hear that's actually playing. And he was the person that put me on my first record at 14,
Mm,
before he did all the Lauryn Hill and,
yeah.
D'Angelo stuff and all. He was putting me on records, so
Mm,
the fact that he was on that record that means a certain thing to people in a certain type of way now, the fact that
yeah.
he's on it is really symbolic. And I feel like it's not by coincidence. So I often try to honor them in that way. Like I
Yeah.
made sure a few years later when I recorded my first album, Live Today, to bring James Poyser on.
Yeah.
He's on like the first song people hear, the real. I try to do things that's symbolic and really honoring those that have profound influences on me that others may not all the way know about.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool because it feels like, because I know you started like with Jill Scott, Music Soul Child, the
Mm-hmm.
stuff you were mentioning, and then this common stuff that's earlier in your career as well. And so you talk about James Poyser. It feels like a passing of the torch to you on a lot of that like Soulquarian neo soul kind of stuff,
Yeah.
uh, into what you're doing now, but then also you're carrying on the torch of jazz stuff. Like, I mean, as far as like John Clayton, Christian McBride, Ron Carter, like
Oh man,
these
John
jazz
Clayton means everything.
legends.
He means
Yeah,
everything.
man. Yeah, it's
Not to cut you
amazing.
off, but
No,
That's
no,
another
no.
example. I'm sorry, I've got it. You mentioned
Please,
him, and
please.
I gotta say something about him
Yes,
because
please.
he's another example of that. Like
Yes.
Mulgrew Miller connected me with him, man. I remember when I used to tour with Mulgrew and Terrell Stanford used to play it sometimes, and Mulgrew used to connect me with other bassists. My first gig with him, man, at the Vanguard, Stanley Clark, and Ron Carr, they all came to the set, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh Lord.
Yeah.
But John Clayton, man, he was because this idea of how things are possible, in certain ways, that it wasn't just orchestration; it was how you can make an orchestra sing in a way that enhances an instrument.
Yeah.
When Terrell Stafford let me hear John Clayton play Emily
Mm.
way back, it opened up my eyes, and this was before I didn't know it wasn't a John Clayton I knew. I just knew him as the bassist, and then when I later find out the Super Bowls he did, with the Whitney
Yeah.
Houston, like people
Yeah. Yeah.
revere
Yeah.
that to this day. It's like the most famous Super Bowl. Also, that's for example. So when I did the Super Bowl last year,
Yeah.
that Lift Every Voice, man, that was in honor also of John Clayton. The
That's
choices, the
amazing.
harmony, and all that. It was in honor of him and those that came before me that told me it's possible because John Clayton started teaching me like he was my bass teacher. I would come out to Altadena, I think he lives, and he would
Mm.
kick my butt, but always encourage me at
Yeah.
the end and say, "Hey, try it all, try it all." And this is
Yeah.
before I even knew all the things he did, and I feel like his journey is a part of my journey. So it's not by coincidence that these things happen. Like my album, when I did Doxology,
Yeah.
that was also in honoring, the church tradition I came up in, but also John Clayton.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like all these people they're a part of it. They're a part of my journey.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that you're carrying the torch from so many different influences, but then also making you're carving your own path at the same time. Like, you know, Color and Noise, the Juneteenth, Hollywood Bowl, all this kind of stuff that is so unique and unique combinations of things, but at the same time you're honoring and respecting and carrying on your influences at the same time.
Thank you,
Um,
man. I'm
yeah,
excited
that's
about this next step, man. I mean, it's all connected, man. Like with the Color of Noise tours, dates that we're doing, going through the rest of the
yeah,
summer. That it's no different from the orchestrations that I'll be doing through the rest of the year. It's making sure that anything I'm doing, man, under my name, it's an environment, it's a platform for others to speak
yeah,
unapologetically. So I'm really excited. I feel like again, these opportunities aren't just to say it happened and to look good and talk about it with family and say
yeah,
they're proud. No, I got to give. I got to make
yeah,
sure others have that opportunity as well. That's going to take this stuff into the 10th power. So I'm
yeah,
excited for that next step, man, to take some of these opportunities and have other orchestrators part of everything that I'm doing. Having some other
yeah,
conductors be a part. Not just African American, because even doing that, that's limiting the beauty of
mm,
acceptance and
yeah,
self-love and beauty of collaboration. So the fact to have people that are from backgrounds that are not mine to be on that platform performing with me under a Color of Noise platform, whether it's touring live or being part of the Color of Noise orchestra or
yeah,
orchestrating under that brand. I'm so excited for in all ways things that I do to really mirror that spirit of acceptance and
yeah,
anybody being a part taking it and running with it.
yeah. That's amazing. So yeah, tell me about the tour you're doing. Tell me about the dates you're hitting. I know it's all winery stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So my Color of Noise tour, we're going to be doing, going from late July, the Blue Note Napa. We're going to do Newport
yes,
Jazz Festival. But I'm excited. We're going to be touring city wineries: Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Chicago,
yeah,
St. Louis, um, Nashville, Atlanta. Going to be having a good time. I'm gonna get a film score done somewhere in there because I got it. We're going to meet this deadline and hit the studio at some point on the road. But we're going to get
yeah,
it done. But I'm so excited about it, man. And it's been fun. Color of Noise came out in 2020 and it's kind of rough not being able to tour it. But the fact
of
that people are
course.
still
Yeah.
remembering that music and wanting to go on this journey with us through the summer, I'm excited, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I could go for a long time.
Oh, it's
This has
all
been so
good,
much
man.
fun. But yeah, I want to be appreciative of your time. So if you got anything else you want to cover, anything else you want to say, uh, the floor is yours.
Oh man. Well, first of all, I love this interview. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about B and
Yeah,
Color of
man.
Noise
Absolutely.
and all that. I don't get to say enough to people about what B symbolized
Yeah.
at that moment in my career and how it allowed me to encapsulate how I was thinking in terms of that instrument in particular.
Yeah.
And when I listen back, I hear who all I was trying to honor in that other heavily sampled musicians as well. So I'm so thankful that that song ended up getting the love that it got. It's still humbling. I can't believe it,
Yeah. Yeah.
that, so many people like that bass line. I remember that moment. But if anything, man, it's encouraged me to keep going unapologetically with it and
Yeah.
make sure every moment I have that's unapologetically me
Mm.
happens, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Cool.
bro.
Well, thank you
I mean,
so
I'm down, man.
much.
If you got one more thing to talk about, I'm open if we can end it here either
Oh
way.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you, I, the problem is like I made like a summary list of stuff you've worked on, stuff you've done.
Mm-hmm.
We could do, I mean, yeah, it just depends on how much time you have. Like we could do like a lightning round. I could just kind of like read down stuff if something comes to mind, a story or something about a
Let's
project you've
do it.
worked on.
That sounds
All right,
fun.
all right,
I
all
say
right,
all
cool.
that be in the moment stuff, and then
Yeah.
you gonna put it to the test. All right, Derek, what's that you said about being in the moment?
um,
Yeah, let's do it.
well, yeah, I mean, you've done a bunch of stuff with Common too. Since one of my favorite things is the tiny desk at the White House. Um, that is such a it's tiny desk is already like a really special thing, but then that performance in particular, it just feels like so intimate. And yeah, if anything comes up for that, what was that like?
First of all, I'm so happy, man, to be part of that tiny desk because it was the only one that was like in the White House. And
Yeah,
what I remember about that one was everything was fine. It was love. It was festive. We were sound checking, and then play. But you don't realize how many security and people are like in there randomly that come out of
yeah.
nowhere. I was like, all right, cool. And I laid the bass down and it laid down on that Eisenhower chair. It was like
Oh
something
yeah.
fancy. It just looked like another chair to me. I'm laying the bass out of nowhere. Whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, and I didn't know they were talking about the bass, so I did. I went with it too. Whoa, whoa, what's the problem? Who did it? You did it, sir. Get your bass off of Eisenhower's chair. So that's funny, man. That was of anything with that moment. It was that like the recording of it, but no one knowing like 15 minutes before, like Secret Service was having a
That's
conversation with
hilarious.
me.
That's hilarious. Um,
Yeah. But
uh,
love to that, man, because um, that timing as well. Even though I was not part of that, you know, uh, film that Rosh did together with Common and Kareem and all that. Was it the 13th? I think it's the 13th is called or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
It was such a special time where the content matter was in a way that was elevating African American voices, but it was again, which I'm about, like accepting and love and making sure it's not separatism, like and making sure that doesn't
yeah,
come across in the music. When I think
yeah,
about it and hear Common's words and the way everybody played, that tiny desk in particular, man, it just felt you knew it was a part of something that wasn't going to happen again in that way with us all. You
yeah.
know,
I love that in particular because I mean, Common's more recent stuff too. It's like it's very much like jazz and poetry, kind of.
yeah, it is
And that performance in particular feels so much like you guys get to do as the band what you do really well, and then he does what he does so well on top of that with his words. But you guys are doing the bringing the same energy, just in different forms, either words or
absolutely,
music.
and that was a cool launching pad for that, because prior to that, a lot of things was free in a similar way, but it was specific album song content based,
Yeah.
based. But there was something about the freedom of that and the cadence of everything that just allowed for us to speak in that way. And it's great to see how he's been exploring in that way since.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Let's see. You mentioned this already, but Q-Tip, Renaissance.
Yeah.
Tell me about your involvement with that, because I mean, Tribe and Upright Bass is like, that's it. It's Upright Bass hip hop heaven. So much Tribe stuff. So getting to work with him on that. I don't know if it was Upright or Electric. I'm not sure exactly. But tell me about your involvement with that.
Much love to him, man. Working with Q-Tip, man, it was, you learn about like the beauty of really being in the moment and allowing time for your idea to come out.
Yeah.
Because when I started working with him and producing with him, I was essentially staying, with him. We chill every day. We get up and start working together. You know what I mean? Ideas I had, it was all on a bunch of gear that he had done a lot of those classic records on.
Yeah.
But it was I learned so much about really meaning it, the work ethic part of it, of really diving into it, getting up, putting your time in, and really honoring, no, not just finding some sample, but like, no, really thinking about every part of it, the sound
Yeah.
of the drums, not just the sound of it. How did we arrive at that? How was it
Mm-hmm.
not just sampled? How did you mic it going into the sample? What mic pre's did you run that sample through on the in Sonic after you got that sample? How did it end
Yeah.
up on record the way it sounded? How did
Yeah.
you mesh that stuff together? And then how did you marry that with this rawness on the sound of the bass? What mic pre's were that?
Yeah.
Let's really talk through the decision making of all that. Like,
Yeah.
we would spend days talking about all of that stuff, man.
Mm.
So I think Q-Tip, and especially the timing, I started working with him in 2002. There's so much stuff that never came out. So many things we created, man. But we started that process in 2002 and working together for almost a year and a half, 2 years.
Mm.
But the respect he gave the music, it was no different than at that time. And I'm touring with Mulgrew Miller and
Yeah.
these other people. It was the same respect that they gave to what they're doing. It made me want to honor whatever I'm doing in the hip hop idiom from that moment on. Because I knew I was working with Tip before I was working with a lot of other people,
Yeah.
So that ended up in the back of my mind whenever an opportunity came to document something, to truly like own that moment and know you're representing all sides of your journey.
Yeah.
That started
Yeah.
with Tip, man, without question.
Hmm.
Without question, Q-Tip.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I know you've worked with Philip Bailey as well.
Yeah. I forgot about
So
that.
tell me about that, because I mean, no pressure, but Verdine White is big shoes to fill. So what is that like, working with an Earth, Wind and Fire legend on bass? What's that like?
Philip Bailey, man, I think what got me with him was how I had no time to really allow that to mess with how I'm feeling in the moment creatively, because he was on percussion right next to me, vibing out, like wanting to jam,
Yeah.
wanting to do all these other things, wanting to explore. And we spent so much time doing that, having conversations, laughing and talking. And then all of a sudden, we worked through the idea and then when it was time to record, we just did it. Much love to him. I think, Philip Bailey knows their legacy. Earth, Wind and Fire
Yeah.
is Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it in that situation, I think whether it was intentional or not, the way he was so inviting creatively. We were there for a session, but we would jam out on all kind of things, talk about all
Yeah.
kind of things, eat, share stories, laugh. And then it was like, okay, let's get this idea down. And before you
Yeah.
know it, the 4 or 5 songs are done. And I think that's the biggest thing that stands out, just the graciousness of Philip Bailey to really just be in that moment and be truly with us, where he's not presenting anything in a way where we feel like we have to chase that. And I
Yeah.
think that's also the best way to honor the great Verdine, White, and all
Yeah.
those people. Not try to directly chase it. But when I tell you, going into the studio, you think about all those
Yeah.
legends. Because
Yeah.
I mean that's legacy right there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Um, yeah, let me go through some of your recording credits, and if something pops out, I'll just list them down, and then you can stop me if something pops out that you're like, oh, let me say something on that. I
All
mean,
good. Fun, man.
there's Robert Glasper you've done extensively, Black Radio, the first one in particular. Like I had the CD of and like wore that out like crazy. Um, so yeah, any
Oh
Glasper
man, yeah.
stuff.
I can't not say something about Black Radio. I mean,
Yes.
first of all, congratulations to you, man. Got the baby on the way. Black Radio. We recorded that when my baby Josephine was in the belly.
Oh wow.
And that was another one. My Color of Noise album, that was first takes, but Black Radio, that was first takes too. Like
Mm,
I everybody we remember about that, that record is like, our daughter in the belly and
yeah.
everybody just, touching my wife Christian and just letting her be a part of that. That just made us all embrace that moment.
Yeah.
Black Radio, man, that first one, man, that was all first takes as well. And it was about
Mm,
acceptance and family
yeah.
environment, man. And I think what I love about how that happened, man, it's such a representation of who my brother Robert Glasper is, man. Love to Chris, Dave, Casey, Benjamin, all those amazing, incredible beings, man. But the spirit of galvanizing and bringing people together and them feeling free to be themselves in that moment,
Hmm.
especially vocalists and singers who sometimes every element got
Yeah.
to be right for them to be down with trying things with the
Yeah.
first take. When we did Cherish Today, Layla started because we were vibing out and I just pointed to her to start. And she
Mm,
started singing. And that was the take. And she thought that was
wow.
just getting her levels right. And that ended up being what ended up the record. But
Yeah.
what brings people into that moment to feel that comfortable is a personality that's like that. So I
Yeah.
think about Black Radio One and my bro Robert's spirit, man, to this day. There's no one
Yeah.
like him, man. He just brings people together that just want to be themselves.
Yeah. That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah, man.
Um, yeah, we got, I mean, Lupe, Talib, Kareem Riggins, Maxwell. I know Jill Scott, Music Soul Child, Snoop of the Hollywood Bowl. Um, you've done arranging and conducting the Oscars, the Super Bowl, uh, and then looking through, like, trying to get all my notes together for this, and then googling like your name and Hollywood Bowl. Like, how many times have you done the Hollywood Bowl? Because there's like so
Man,
many results with different artists like, popping up.
it's been a few now, man. I mean, that's my favorite orchestra in the world, man. LA
Yeah,
Phil. That my goodness. I mean, leave them alone. They are just incredible, open minded too, and they play with that open mindedness too, which was a
yeah,
reflection of them. Like they're doing all kind of stuff,
yeah,
like so that's not by coincidence. But I really I don't take for granted, man, working with them in particular. They've been very gracious. A couple weeks ago, got to I'd worked with Jack Black and
yeah. I saw
did
this
that
too.
features
Yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
Nintendo was really kind, man. They let me just reimagine it. However, but
yeah,
that's been fun working with LA Phil. It's, so many people bring projects to them that's on a certain type of scale. Things are going to be executed
yeah.
beautifully. So it's been fun, man. Especially this summer, working with them on that and with Janet and a few things. It's
Yes,
been fun.
yeah,
Super
man.
accepting. I think that's what was so unexpected when I got to work with them. How no questions whatsoever. And I mean, I've been blessed in that way with a few orchestras, man. But being the LA Phil, you expect, going through things with a fine tooth comb and just checking it. No, is this what you want to do? Boom, we're doing it.
Yeah.
No questions. And it's been fun because that lends to true collaboration. And I think the LA Phil, that's a good representation of like true collaboration. The
Yeah.
NSO as well, in a different type of way. True
Yeah.
collaboration, which is necessary. And
Yeah.
then it's on us when we're in these situations to make the most of it so the door can stay open for so many more.
Yeah. Yeah, we did the Illmatic show
Mm-hmm.
with them. It was, I think, May of last year,
Yeah.
at Disney Hall. And I'm
Oh,
sure
right. I heard
you've
about
worked
that.
with, yeah, I'm sure you've worked with Dudamel,
Love Gustavo.
on these. Yeah. Unbelievable working with him, because everything that you're saying as far as like being open and
Mm-hmm.
the acceptance and him inviting it, like he's not
Not wearing his
dividing the
resume on his
line.
shoulders. He's just,
No, he's like
yes.
so, yes. And
Yeah.
like, how can we make this the best thing possible?
Yeah.
That show was really interesting because the drummer was a different drummer than had done all the other shows. And he'd
Okay.
played with Nas before, but he had not played the orchestra shows. So he knew the original recordings,
Okay.
but not the orchestral arrangements.
Okay.
And it's mostly the same. There's just, a few interlude things and
Right.
a few spots
Yeah.
has got to drop out, but he doesn't read.
Okay.
So that was a very interesting thing
There might have been a
for
couple
me.
moments. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I'm trying to throw him silent cues, but then also Dudamel's looking to me for,
Right.
are we in the right spot here? The
Yeah.
drummer just
Yeah.
did this, or
Yeah.
is this? But
And he's very trusting when he's looking at you. He means it.
Oh,
He's trusting,
absolutely.
and that's so
Yeah.
amazing about him. Like,
Yeah.
he's not looking at you with a, okay, what is this guy? It's truly all right, whatever. He's got that just let me know thing about him.
I got to tell you too, like we did a brief rehearsal before the performance, and so there was a few moments where that kind of happened, a little bit of a disconnect, and we're having to iron out how is this section going to work or whatever, and then we would figure that out, and he ended up sort of defaulting to me, and then I'm in the middle, like he would turn to me and be like, strings, let's run this part, and he's like, play this a little more marcato or whatever, and then he would turn to me and be like, is that okay? And I'm like, I don't know why you're looking at me.
Yeah.
And so for me, being in the middle of that with the
And
LA
he
Phil,
means it. He's not just saying it.
Totally sincerely, yes. But
selfless, yeah.
Yes, having like one of the greatest conductors in the world, and then I'm also with like one of the best MCs in the world, and then I'm playing your arrangements. I'm like pinching myself, like, what is happening right now? How is all of this happening to me right now? This is wild.
Oh man, I'm glad you got to work with him, man. I know he's moved on from the LA Phil. I think he's
going to New York.
Right? New York. Yeah.
I don't know if he's left yet or not.
Okay.
But
okay.
But yeah, I know he's moving on to New York. Yeah.
But what an incredible soul he is, man.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's incredible.
Yeah, man.
Woo. Man.
Yeesh, this is fun.
Yeah. This is very fun, man.
Yeah,
Thank you for taking time to talk.
Man, absolutely, bro. Absolutely.
What do you got coming? I mean, you got that tour coming. Rest of the year, I know you said you're scoring a movie.
Yeah, I'm excited about that, man. There's a couple of film projects, man, in the works right now, but over the next few weeks, we're going to finish up this project, man. A lot of people don't know, man. Pepsi, the framework of how we understand marketing and everything in advertisement and sports and all these things, and commercials and the $1 million commercials on Super Bowl, man, Pepsi revolutionized the game. All of that, man, going back to the 40s and 50s. So they're doing a special, man, where they're really documenting that and how that happened, And
okay.
It's really incredible, man. I'm so excited, man, for that to come out, and it's a special. A lot of the people are still alive that were a part of that, that because Pepsi was also one of the first companies that actually had an African American team and actually valued the African American market and marketed to them.
Yeah.
And, got blacklisted and all this stuff. But the model was so successful, it led to opportunities from there.
Yeah.
That is still the framework to how things in commercial are to this day and marketing to this day, and how music is connected, to this day, and why they even still do Pepsi halftimes. It's all connected, man. It's really cool. So I'm doing a special on that right now.
That's cool. That's cool.
Thank
and
you,
especially, bro. I mean, you haven't done the halftime show, like Pepsi. That's a Pepsi thing. So like you're connected as part of that whole story. That's cool,
man. It's so crazy, man. I was just talking with my brother Adam Blackstone, who won the Emmy for that last year, man. For that whole Dre and Snoop. Man, it was just like going back to my upbringing, man, and that whole acceptance and self-love and just trying and being in the moment. Like, I think about my friends I came up to who happen to be bass players, from Adam Blackstone to Thaddeus Trebet to Wayne Moore.
Yeah.
And all these people I grew up with. Like, the common thing is, man, we just dreamed. And I want to say there wasn't anyone telling us we can't, but maybe there was. We just had each other, so we just kept going for it.
Yeah.
So to this day, I feel like my journey is so connected to all of them, man. Like, well, I feel like there's so much to give, to honor the community, to give back, and make sure other people can have the experience that we had. Because so much of that lended itself to things that we're doing now. Because we felt like it was possible, but didn't just look at it as a pipe dream. Like, no, let's try it. Who cares when somebody said we can't? Just do it.
Yeah.
And we did it, and we had each other to fall back on. And I feel like that self-love, acceptance, and hey, you can do it. I'm not just going to say you can do it. Let me provide a platform for you to do it, an environment for you to do it. Let's do it together. I feel like that's part of what I need to do. So all those things tying in the Color of Noize and projects that I'm doing is not by coincidence, man. It's honoring my whole life, man, and the experiences me and my friends have had.
Yeah, I think that's very evident in all of your work. So
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, bro.
It's amazing to watch.
Thank you, man.
Derrick Hodge, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time to share your story with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother, man. Congrats on your success with this podcast, man. All the best to you. Much love.